Well, welcome everybody. My name is Michael Crow, President of Arizona State University, and I am here today with Eloy Oakley, who is the Chancellor of the Community Colleges of California. He is, by all estimations, probably running one of, if not the largest college organization on the planet. 2 million or so students, give or take, more than 100 physical sites for delivery in many university or college districts. The state of California right now has an economy, somewhere between Spain and France. It's in terms of its size, 40 million people, give or take, growing to 50 million people unless the people of California divided up into 3 states. You might have read that story. That would be the rich and the 2 less rich states, and so seems like a bad idea to me. And so. Yes. Having said that, I think what we'll try to do today in today's conversation is very informal. Eloy and I are going to talk about the challenge that he has today, the assignment that he has been asked to take on by Jerry Brown, the governor of California, and then everything that's involved in all of that. And the way to think about this is essentially, how does California, with 40 million people, really begin systematically taking on this issue of, on an even broader scale than it has up to this point, of lifelong education, university transfer, career and job preparation, special technical training, all these things at scale. So Eloy, why don't we start with you describing for everybody here what it is that you've got in your hand right now and how it's doing. That is, what is the California Community College system? How's it working? How's it doing? It's for those of you not familiar with this, this is a late evolutionary model in the American higher education system, just a few decades old, where the people decided that in this democracy, we were going to have colleges available to everyone, everywhere, all the time, to help them move forward with their life. And that project is still in its morphing stage. So what do you have right now?
Well, what we have, this is a great opportunity because even the President of the United States is asking what community colleges are all about. So it gives us an opportunity to educate everybody in the country. But what we have is this great asset in California, and really the community college system throughout the nation, where we are right at the intersection of the changes in the workplace, the demand for more credentials, the changes in terms of what K-12 education looks like and how it's becoming K through 14, and the need for an incumbent workforce to be upskilled and reskilled. So all of those missions are coming together in our 114 colleges and really the 1,200 community colleges across the country, and at speed of which we are having a difficult time keeping up with our traditional delivery model. So that's why we've engaged in this conversation about the 115th college being a fully online enterprise, being able to reach a number of incumbent workers throughout the workforce. So that's what we're all about. We're serving well over 2 million students. That's down from 2.8 or so at the beginning of the recession. But we still are a tremendous asset to not only California, but if you think about it, nearly 1 in 4 of every community college student in the nation is a California community college student.
So talk a little bit about, so you have this physical reality, this technology-enhanced learning environment that you already have on your existing campuses. You have a great and dedicated faculty. I've visited with faculty in multiple California community college sites. I was so inspired by their commitment to the student, the commitment to the success of the community. Yet at the same time, all colleges and universities in the United States, at least in the United States, perhaps elsewhere, they have these physical and structural and design limits. So what are the design limits that impact you with your present program, not the new college,
right,
with your present program?
Well, those limitations are what you would traditionally consider the limitations of a traditional academic calendar. So, I mean, we enroll students 2, maybe sometimes 3 times a year. Your traditional semester, which is anywhere from 16 to 18 weeks, and then perhaps a summer session, depending on whether or not the state of California has the funds to offer a summer session. And so it is a traditional seat time model. which is very difficult for working Californians to be able to access.
So in that space, what do you wish it was? So I wrote down clock speed. So you wish that you could control your clock speed. Some things require traditional seat time, other things don't. What do you wish your clock speed was? What do you wish would be the way that you could operate? And then how can innovators, technologists, investment firms, others, how can they help you affect clock speed?
Well, what we'd like to see is multiple clock speeds available to different types of learners. Whether you need a clock speed like a competency-based education model where you can accelerate it as quickly as you want.
And take advantage of whatever you've already
right,
learned.
Take advantage of whatever you've learned.
Yeah.
Whether or not you want to come to a traditional brick and mortar undergraduate experience, but also we are developing out the online education initiative, which will allow us the opportunity to have a student fully navigate a program of study online. So we want to have...
With the student now being anyone, any age, anywhere, any place, anytime. Right.
Yeah, so we want multiple clock speeds, depending on the learner, depending on what their situation is. We want them to have access to our community college system.
So what's another limit after clock speed and calendar?
Well, another limit is, quite frankly, the way that we're organized. We're organized around very traditional missions. And so the opportunity for innovation is very difficult. It's very difficult within a system that is funded in a very traditional way, and that's based on the number of students you have at the third week of our census date. We're very traditional in terms of how we report to our community. We have 72 independently elected governing boards. And so...
Viva the revolution.
Yeah. And we have 72 different bargaining unit agreements. Obviously, collective bargaining is a big issue in California. We honor that, but it's very difficult.
Viva the United States.
It's very difficult to innovate within those existing
So what do you do? Like, what are your options within your organizational structure and your design structure? So you've got different governing boards, you've got collective bargaining units, you've got all these complexities. What would be two things you could do to help make your organizational structure more adaptive that still fully respects collective bargaining and still fully respects local governance?
Well, what we'd like to do is create another organization, an organization that is solely dedicated to innovating around this space dedicated to adult learners, to use different delivery models, to look at a very different academic calendar, and allow that space to be innovative and to be able to transfer that knowledge to our 114 colleges so they can adapt as we move along.
So an innovation center that's got field practice and field understanding and can prove things out so that others in the operating colleges spread out across the state can say, I see that, I see how that can work.
That's right.
I'm going to cherry pick that a little bit. I'm going to take a little of this, a little of that, and then apply it.
That's right, as well as we want the ability to scale, and to scale as quickly as possible. While we serve 2.1 million students, we know that there are nearly 8 million working Californians between the ages of 25 and 60 that don't have a college credential and that are in the workforce right now. So we need scalability as well.
Some kind of post-secondary. It could be a certificate, it could be a technical certificate, and a BA, and AA, it could be any of those, right?
It could be any of those, it could be a micro-credential, just the opportunity for some economic mobility.
So what else on the limits? What else would you work? So we got calendar, clock speed, organizational structure, new innovation organization that gives you, what other things, any?
We need a way to take greater advantage of the latest in learning science and artificial intelligence in order to better personalize the learning experience.
These people up here in this first 3 rows are all robots.
Yes.
And so...
well, these days, there's no way to tell, so. But yes, I mean, we need to be able to access technology in a very different way. And we need to be able to have that opportunity to show how it can help us increase the capacity of our faculty, of our staff, not replace our faculty.
So one of the things you and I have talked about is, all the doubters that are out there and the skeptics who appropriately are doubtful that human beings can ever be enhanced to the extent that some believe technology can enhance them as teachers. And so you need learning science evidence, you need learning outcome evidence, you need all of that. And we need a lot more evidence at a lot more scale than anything that's been produced before.
Absolutely. To us in the Chancellor's office, it's all about scale. And this is the hardest thing for us to grapple with. I mean, we look at the California community college system as it is today, and we're doing a wonderful job of access. But if we think about it in terms of the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years, the scale that we're going to have to reach in order to ensure that California remains a competitive state is far greater than the scale that we're accomplishing today.
Well, it's probably even greater than the 8 million, because if you think about lifelong learning, and you think about people changing careers many times, you think about people maybe just getting around to learning intensively after they turn 60.
Right.
And they want to take all their wisdom from their work and their life and then use it and then go and do all those things they couldn't do. I mean, in some ways, that's what the community college was designed to do. Right. It was to serve the community in all ways and all levels. And so if you had a holiday wish list, what would be the biggest present what's the biggest present when you see that on your holiday wish list? It would be what?
Full authority to implement what I think I need to do.
Full authority. Yeah, so there's something to that. I'm familiar with that constraint, and so
right.
so the issue is, one of the issues is, have we really given college and university executives sufficient authority to actually implement the kinds of changes and adaptations that are needed to fulfill our educational objectives, or are we somehow limited in the overall design? It doesn't mean that no one has full authority. I mean, everyone reports to some sort of board or council or something, so it's not, without governance. It's what is the governance about? So we have this joke sometimes that a former regent of mine used to say. Every time a fellow regent would start to go down the wrong path, he'd say, "Now, what color do you want that paint to be inside boiler number 8?" Meaning they would get down to the texture of the carpet as something that they wanted to work on. And so, what would be your idea, without getting you into hot water, because of course no one's watching with that red light over there.
No one's watching.
And so, what would be your idea of the kinds of things that, in general, governance boards should be doing with academic executives at public institutions?
Well, much of what I would ask for is what we're asking for from the state legislature right now, which is the opportunity to develop a fully tech-enabled online college that reports to a statewide governance entity. Right now, we have 72 locally elected.
There's seats up front, guys. Seats up front.
Come on up.
Come on up.
So with the opportunity to open up possibilities in terms of delivery of educational models.
Right.
I mean,
so
that's
the governor's behind you. He's put $150 million on the table, and we're going to come back to that. Now, you got the legislature considering it, for which it's, consideration is a complicated thing.
It is.
But so what specific? I mean, so governing boards, should they set goals?
Yes.
Should they hold academic executives to those attainment of those goals?
So yes, we've had a challenge, and I'll only speak to California. We've had a challenge between allowing the local governing boards or the governing boards to have the autonomy and the accountability and the responsibility to put into motion policies and practices that answer to the needs of California versus having every constituent group dictate how that should be done. Mm-hmm. We live in this in-between world, so what we would like is for there to be more general accountability, more general responsibility placed on the college itself. And so the governing board should have very clear accountability structure, what we want to accomplish, who we want to serve.
So specific goals like graduation rates, graduation numbers, degree types, certificate types, all those kinds of things.
All those kinds of things, and the opportunity to adjust as the economy of California adjusts.
Right. So in that context then, I know from some of my own conversations with Governor Brown through the last several years off and on, he has unbelievably high aspirations for educational attainment for Californians. He has deep concern about whether or not the higher education system is egalitarian enough or fair enough. Does it really reach everyone in significant ways? And so what do you think is the logic behind the budget request for $150 million of new public support to allow you to build what would be, at that scale of investment, one of the most significant online technology-enhanced learning enterprises humans have ever constructed? So what's the goal? What's the goal here?
So the goal, and certainly, well, I don't speak for the governor, I know he has a desire to open up greater possibilities. He has seen how, whether it be medicine or education, can be personalized and customized to individuals. He would like to see it be more individualized, more personalized, and more people have access to a public California higher education system. He truly believes that the three segments of higher ed in California are the greatest structures developed in the country. But we have not kept up with the demand, we have not kept up with the changes, and really it's about this higher education master plan being as adaptable as it was envisioned to be.
So without change, let's say you have the exact structure that you have now and the exact technology configuration that you have now, and let's say that you wanted a quarter of the adult population actively involved in some kind of organized educational activity through the community colleges at any given point in time. So we'll call that 8 million people, lacking another number. So that's roughly 4 times the number of people. So what's your chances of success for educating 8 million adults with your present format?
There's no way that we could scale the present format. One, there is resources, cost, human capital, any of a number of limitations.
So it's not affordable.
No.
It's not doable from a human capital perspective. The present design is insufficient. So without naming names, so who would be then resistant to a new model if the educational requirements to produce a better set of outcomes for a broader set of people can't be attained with the present structure? In a sense, you're trying to figure out how to enhance the present structure. Right. And sometimes, at least my experience has been that people keep thinking that these technologies are intended to replace faculty, right, as opposed to augment faculty. And there's no replacement. We've got too few faculty. We have too few systems. We don't have enough technology helping these faculty to be more successful. So, so in a sense, like, this is sort of like apple pie. Who's against it?
Well, you are trying to get me in trouble, but no, I mean, if you think about it this way, who's against it are those individuals who think that the solution already lies within the 114 college system, that if we just put more money into the existing system, that we could produce those results.
So you just said that the existing system can't, and I agree with this, the existing system cannot enhance its productivity by a factor of 4 in its existing configuration, regardless of the amount of additional right, resources, that it's not a model that works.
And that is absolutely our argument, but there are some who believe that because we haven't fully funded the mission of the California community colleges, that we should be focused on that first. Yeah. And of course, that's a never-ending argument. I don't know that we will ever be fully funded, and to different people that means different things. But for us, I mean, it's everything from administrators worrying about how this is going to cannibalize their enrollment, to faculty worrying about what this means
because
to their
fewer people want to learn. Is that what
right,
they think?
Well, I mean, I think some fear that we are not going to serve 8 million more people, that we are just going to replace the 2 million students that are in our brick and mortar colleges and put them somewhere online, which, we reject that notion. We think that there is tremendous demand in California that we haven't even begun to serve.
So $150 million probably seems like a lot of money. It's
actually 120, but I'll take 150.
Okay, 120. And so it should have been 150. And so
I think ASU is putting up the other 30.
No, actually, all these people did by paying us a fee to come to this meeting, and so thank you. And so, what can you do for $120 million? That's not the solution,
right?
And so you're talking about millions of learners. So right, it's not like I got $3 per learner, to advance these learners, or $4 per learner. I mean, so what do you hope to accomplish? Where do you want to end up?
Right,
and how long do you think it's going to take you to get there?
So the $120 million is $100 million up front, one time, sort of the startup cost, and $20 million ongoing. So that's permanent funding for the college ongoing. We would certainly partner with a number of philanthropic organizations to help us build capacity even greater. But basically what we want to do right out the gate is, and we've already begun to partner with several large labor organizations like SCIU that have specific needs for their workers. So we are going to begin to build pathways that are supported by both employer organizations, labor organizations that have real demand today, and we're going to begin building from there. And then, you know, the sky's the limit after that. Everything from, I mean, we've been approached from everyone from Autodesk to many other, Salesforce, many other organizations that have ongoing learning needs for their workers, for their clients, you name it. The one thing we know for sure is that individuals in the workforce are going to need more education going forward, more certification going forward, not less. So we want to build the infrastructure for that with this $120 million.
So you're going to start off with certain types of credentials is where you're going to begin. Stackable,
I
call them stackable micro-credentials, stackable credentials.
Whatever the buzzword is today.
Merit badges, tradable credentials, and so forth. So I think that's a good place to start, and you can make a lot of progress there. In fact, there's a huge opportunity for innovation in that space and definition in that space to bring some discipline to this part of the educational arena. And so, again, how do you think you're going to ultimately secure engagement from your broader faculty? What's it going to take to get people excited about this?
Sure. So, I mean, we know that within our 114 colleges, there are a number of faculty already serving some of these needs. We're very excited about this possibility. But the challenge is within the structures that we have in academia, within the academic senate structures, the collective bargaining structures, these voices have a hard time really finding a foothold. And so what we want to do is give them this opportunity. Give them this opportunity to come be part of this new venture, this new endeavor, and take those skills that they've already been developing and then fully, have them fully funded and fully embraced. So we think that there will be a lot of excitement within our colleges, within our faculty. And I think it also provides our faculty the opportunity for professional development, for understanding how to deliver different educational models that they currently don't have access to.
So one of the things that you've talked about when you talk about changing structure and so forth is this, this whole notion that we may have a too rigid of a design. So, so we have this design, we have replicant departments at many colleges. We've got, you know, the kid can show up here in San Diego or up in San Francisco and can take basically the same programs, and you want that. What stomach do you have for unique variation emanating out of the various colleges where they can begin to take ownership of their own intellectual identities, their own intellectual activities, so that then they can begin producing, in a sense, hallmarked or trademarked outcomes?
Well, I mean, you know, one of the beauties of the community college system is that's exactly what it was designed to do. We were created to be the most flexible segment of higher education. The flexibility needed to adapt to the changes in regional workforces, state economies, that is our mission. So we want to begin to accelerate that. And while many of our colleges in our system do tremendous work innovating, whether it's Foothill College or here in San Diego, many of the San Diego area colleges have done tremendous work, but hasn't been scaled. And that's our challenge. How do we move to scalability? Taking some of the great innovation that's happening at our colleges, but move it to a very different scale, because we're not just serving local needs anymore. That's still important, but the way the workforce is evolving, we really need scalable solutions, because the number of participants in the workforce that need this ongoing learning is growing every single day.
So you know this, but I was born here in San Diego. My dad was in the Navy. We lived here 4 different times. Also lived in Alameda, California, Long Beach, California. And I went to school down the road here in Imperial Beach, next to Tijuana, right on the border. And so most of the kids there were from working class families, enlisted families in the military, those kinds of backgrounds. And most of those kids didn't ever even think about or talk about going to college.
Right.
And so one of the things I think that's happened in our society is that we have decided that learning after elementary school and high school is some kind of it's like you move to different boxes. Either you're going to college or you're not going to college. You might go to community college as a way to go to college. You don't think about learning becoming a lifetime thing. You're not taught about learning as a lifetime thing. And so I think of all the smart kids and all the capable kids and all the creative kids and all the talented kids, really almost everybody had some way that they could do something, but they actually got segmented from elementary school going forward. And so what could a California Community College online, whatever you're ultimately going to call the thing, what could it do to change families' views of education across the socioeconomic spectrum? Because I think we've got deeper cultural problems about education itself. And I know this because I come from communities where higher education is actually loathed. I mean, it's actually despised. And and I know these people myself personally because they share some of those views about me. And so, how could this online college do more than just pick up 4 or 5 million other learners? How could it start changing culture?
Well, I think that's exactly the ultimate goal, is how do we change the culture of what we see today as the higher education pipeline? I mean, we really need to completely begin to break down all of those structures. There is really no sense anymore to have a K through 12 structure. I mean, you know, your high school diploma was at one point the default to get into the workforce. Those days are gone. You really need a K through 14 structure. And even beyond that, it's about breaking down the learning, the skills, attainment that you get, whether you're pursuing a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and begin to break that down, really democratize that skill attainment for a lot more people. And so, you know, we've got to re-look at how we look at skill attainment, how we look at higher education, and be able to provide individuals the opportunity to build maybe in much smaller chunks going forward. Because just thinking that, you know, my end goal is to go to UCLA and that's, you know, my default into the workforce, that model doesn't work for millions and millions of Californians, let alone...
It works for 20 or 30 people.
Right. And, you know, no disservice to UCLA. It's a great institution. But there's only so much capacity.
Yes.
And what are we saying to everybody else who doesn't have access to that capacity?
Well, that's what's happened. So what we're saying to everybody else, because we decided there was a capacity limit. I'm not sure why we decided there was a capacity limit. This is one of the main missions of ASU, is to defeat this notion regarding access and excellence in the same institution. So how can you, I mean, here you're sitting in this fantastic role, this absolutely unique role where you have a political leadership that's willing to find resources, or at least try to. You've got this platform of these 100+ places. You've got thousands and thousands of faculty members. You've got millions of ready learners. You've got this this front edge, leading edge economy. You've got all these things that are coming down the line, and so you're sitting now in the seat where you might be able to alter the trajectory of the model of education down to the unit level of the family. If people could actually at some point sense that the community college was actually there for every member of the family through their life, I think that could go a long way to enhancing our overall social and economic outcomes across the country. And so, can you design that into this?
Absolutely. I think the question is, at this point, is how do we let the genie out of the bottle? How do we allow for this innovation to really take hold and take us to places that we currently don't see as possible? And that's exactly what we want to do, is to be able to look at this. Yes, first, we're focused on these discrete pathways in specific job categories, in specific industries that we know are huge demand. But once we get going and once we bring on employer partners, once we bring on labor organization partners, social justice partners, we can really look at how we enhance learning for all Californians.
Well, especially let's think about social justice partners. So we've got, all of us know what Opportunity Youth are. It's a positive name for people between the ages of 16 and 24 that are neither employed or in school.
Right.
And so they're involved in neither activity. They're not making progress on either activity. There are 9 or 10 million of these individuals in the country right now. There's a large number in California. There's a large number in Phoenix. We've got them all over the place. And so how do we get to the point where people realize, and this might seem like this is like something that people are saying, why is he talking about this? I mean, it's like, how do we make certain that there is in fact no transactional barrier to some aspects of education? There can be transactional barriers to some, like to get into UCLA or to get into Stanford or whatever, there's a transactional barrier. Okay, fine. But if you have transactional barriers around core things that are required for the democracy to work and the economy to flow and the economy to adjust, then we've made a mistake in the design. And we think that somehow transactional barriers now, they in a sense have become the raison d'etre of some educational institutions. How can you take a leadership in convincing the public who are far from convinced that educational engagement and educational attainment is critical to the success of their families and their communities? How can this project and you help do that?
Well, I think within the California community college system and more broadly community colleges across the nation, we have the advantage of we are probably right now the most trusted segment of public education around.
Because you're touching
because
lots
we're
of people.
touching lots of people, all ages, and we have the wonderful opportunity to say that we accept the top 100% of students.
Yes, all 100%.
And there's something to be said for that.
All right.
So when we say the top 100% of students, that means that people of all ages at any point in time in their career or their educational trajectory can touch one of our community colleges.
No income barrier, no race barrier, no ethnicity barrier, no fake barrier.
Right. So we want to eliminate as many of those transactional barriers as possible and create a credentialing system, create an education and skill attainment system that allows individuals to just continue to access those skills and that education, as well as build those on-ramps, because we know that you're going to need much higher level credentials as we go forward. We want to build the on-ramps to those higher level credentials with our current partners in California, as well as with ASU and other partners.
Yeah. So before we turn to some questions from the audience or maybe some input from the audience, so one of the things I said to Eloy that we would try to do today without each of you standing up and selling some particular thing that you've got is short ideas. You know, just short ideas, short questions, short ideas. No statements, short ideas, short questions. Like, what's your story? I know you were in the Army. You ended up, going to college and then running community college. Like, why are you sitting in this chair trying to take on I mean, you got this assignment, though. I'm a big believer that history is determined by the people who stand up at particular moments and somebody says, oh, by the way, Eloy, I'd like you to build an online college for 8 million people. I'd like you to change the trajectory of California, which, by the way, is a really strange place. You know, some of the deepest segments of poverty in the entire country are right here in California, and unbelievable wealth all in the same place at levels that have never been seen anywhere. In fact, if you looked at the way the state was going to be broken up into 6 different states, in the last time they're going to break California up, 2 of those states were among the poorest in the entire country if they had become states.
Right.
And one of them was unbelievably rich compared to any other state. And so it's just kind of strange. And so what, like, who are you? Just help everybody to understand who you are. Like, why are you sitting here? And now that you have this assignment, and now that it's being recorded over there, everybody knows that history will now be determined by you. So and your team.
That makes a lot of people nervous.
Yes. So who are you?
So I'm a native Californian.
Yes.
I'm born and raised in the Southeast LA area, working parents, first generation student, Mexican-American background. Much like the millions and millions of California students today, I didn't go into higher ed right out of high school. I went into one of the best competency-based educations, the United States Army. I learned a lot about competency-based education, jumping out of airplanes. You know, you either mastered it or you didn't.
Yes. You got the wings or not.
It's pretty straightforward. And so when I got out of the military, I worked, started raising a family. Like many, many of our students, I found a community college that allowed me access to a higher education, which then allowed me access to the University of California, which then allowed me access to this position that I'm here now. So, I mean, I wake up every day wanting to create the same opportunity I had. I was lucky. We shouldn't rely on luck. It's not about beating the odds, it's about changing the odds, and we really want to change the odds in the California community colleges. So,
questions. And so, if you talk too long, I'll just talk over you. So, way there in the back, I see a hand. I don't know if is there a microphone? If there's no microphone, you should yell the question. Okay. So how can we make high school less drone-like in accepting drone-like curriculum and turn it into more problem-oriented,
Sure.
problem-solving, unique, skill-enhancing, actually perhaps human-activating learning? That's not exactly what you said, but close enough. So.
Well, first of all, I would say that the biggest problem we face with K-12 education is that colleges and universities are designing the requirements to get into higher education. And so we complain a lot about what's happening in K-12 education, but it is us in higher education that is, causing all this friction downstream because of our requirements. Because think about how competitive we have made it to get into, in California, Berkeley or UCLA. And the kind of hoops.
So for those of you that don't know, 110,000 applicants at UCLA last year for the
Right.
freshman class, 6,700 students
I mean,
in the freshman class.
ridiculous grade point average, ridiculous SAT scores. That's us that has caused the problems, okay? Not the K-12 system. We've caused the problem. So how do we reshape what we're asking K-12 to educate our students on so that we can more holistically take them and allow them the opportunity to excel? So as long as we create this selective mentality, then we are going to have people teaching to a test or a requirement or whatever that may be. So I think before we get into the question of how K-12 needs to change, we have to think about how do we change the way that we accept students into higher education.
Yeah, so Jamie?
Yeah, so
People should stand up so people can hear the question. So.
So the idea is, because we talked about how some people look down on higher education. Well, sometimes it's a demographic issue as well, right? So
Right.
you have Latino families who, girl gets into Princeton or some other school and she says, hey, Dad or Papi, I'm going to Princeton. And father says, no, you're staying home and taking care of your brothers and sisters. What are the ideas around creating partnerships with schools, not just
Right.
in California, but all over the country,
Right.
where you can serve those students in the community because
Right.
they can't go.
So here's Jamie's part of Jamie's question. So why is it that every college and every university thinks they have to solve every problem themselves? Why don't we have leagues and groups and ways in which the colleges can work together to help kids so that they don't necessarily have to move away 10,000 miles, basically? Okay.
Well, I mean, I think it's a great question about the kind of culture that we've created in our systems. I mean, in California, there is at least a structure to try and deal with that. There is the partnership between community college, CSU, and the UC. And, CSU is the largest public higher education university in the country. There's no reason why we can't create those partnerships to allow for place-bound students for whatever reason. Whether culture or whether necessity, family.
Doesn't make any difference.
Doesn't make any difference.
Doesn't make any difference.
Allow
with the
them
reasons,
to be educated
Right.
where they're at. I think ASU has been trying to do that. The other thing that always drives me crazy about this question, not necessarily that you're driving me crazy, but the question drives me crazy, is
Jamie works for Google. They drive everyone crazy.
Is this notion that success means getting students into a highly selective university, which we know is impossible to scale. So what should we be after? Scaling access to great education.
Oxymoronic.
That's right. Scaling access to great higher education, or continuing to highlight the one student in the neighborhood that goes to Princeton or Harvard and, as Joe Biden says, gets access to a wealthy roommate.
Well, one of the things I've said along the way is I don't know why something like Princeton and Harvard and other great universities that are out there that are highly selective aren't viewed for exactly what they are, which is tremendous honors colleges, like the great honors colleges at the big public universities and at some other schools. And then what we've done is we have to move away from this notion that in fact is the achievement. Now that's extremely difficult to do when it's become the coin of the realm, but in any event. Other questions? Yes, over here.
Right.
So internships, apprenticeship model?
I mean, certainly the apprenticeship model has definitely grown in favor across the country, whether it was the last administration or this administration. In California, apprenticeship is a big issue. Career exploration, career education and workplace education is a big issue that we're trying to incorporate into the 115th online college. So in our pathways that we're developing, there has to be an employer partner that provides the skill demonstration, the experience in the workforce.
Connected to the educational institution, not just as a separate thing, right?
No, and so it is something that we are exploring at scale and trying to come up with different solutions to the myriad of complications that we create because of whether it be work comp requirements or liability requirements or any of a number. I think a great example is the challenges we're facing in healthcare. You know, to become a registered nurse or to become a licensed vocational nurse, you have to have clinical experience. Well, employers are shrinking the availability of clinical experience, so we have to continue to find more and better ways to include that experiential opportunity, because it is the only way that we're going to get these individuals to a successful outcome.
Maybe a couple more questions, then we're going to go to rapid fire ideas in short form English. And so right back there, question. Yep, right there, the scar, I can't see what you have on, but yes, you, yeah.
Thank you so much for a very interesting talk. My question is, to reach the 8 million students at the very different stages in their life, one approach could be for the state to provide finances for those students and allow innovation to happen in the private sector or in different startups.
Yeah.
But what is the purpose, or like what public sector, community college leaders can do, and the startups, that ecosystem can
Right.
do? And also the second part of that is, what are your thoughts about collaboration with the private sector?
So the root of the question is, why not fund the student and allow the market to respond with solutions that help the student to be educated over their life regardless of their age or their stage of preparation, as opposed to turning to a public institution and saying to the public institution, given all of its limits and constraints, well, Eloy, why don't you take on the weight of this yoke and drive this thing forward?
That is a whole afternoon discussion, but
which will be in the room just down the hall.
You know, to some extent, we've seen that already in the marketplace with the increase in availability of Pell dollars, with the increased availability of GI Bill dollars. We've turned that loose on the marketplace. In California, at least, the outcome wasn't great for our students. We saw the collapse of Corinthian. We saw the collapse of ITT. So I think certainly the venture capital community, the startup community, does an excellent job at prototyping technology and really creating and adapting technology. But I think, you know, there has to be a partnership with the public sector, because the public sector is the only sector that is answerable to the people of California or the people of any state, and has the investment, the long-term investment necessary to see these changes through over generations, and not just be, you know, answerable to a particular investor. Here, the investors are the state of California, the people of California. So there's got to be a greater partnership, and we're certainly open to that partnership.
So let's, yes.
Civil Francis, with a sense of the future of Arizona, you mentioned a K-14 system. Are you envisioning just 2 more years of community college as part of everyone's thinking, or do you actually envision the potential for partnering with K-12?
Right. Well, there's a lot of great innovation happening across the country, everything from the P-TECH model to different models that we're taking a hard look at. I do think, and this is a separate conversation, that we really need to reimagine that K through or pre-K through the first couple of years of higher education model, and really relook at, you know, blurring the lines between high school and whatever you call that first, second year experience in an undergraduate institution. So it is something that we are taking a hard look at, that we are right now financing through innovation awards, looking at different models. So we hope to be able to build on that over the next few years.
So turning now for the last 5 minutes to the lightning round, Chancellor Oakley has this unique assignment. Please build the largest thing that the world has ever seen. Please figure out how to take California to higher and higher levels of educational attainment using technology. Please enable technological tools to engage 8 million new learners. So you have a chance right now to say, as if you're just meeting him with getting, you got your, this is shorter than an elevator pitch. This is, what is your idea? So who's got an idea? Yes, let's hear the idea, and I'll tell you if it's the right format. Right format, yes.
Full disclosure, I did meet him previously.
Okay.
How about instead of just warehousing people in prisons, we provide some sort of technological intervention in the way of skills or education and training?
Okay, technological intervention for training for folks that are trapped in a prison. Yes, very good idea. Exactly what I'm looking for.
One quick idea.
Stand up so people can hear you.
One quick idea is to use blockchain to manage student micro-credentialing.
Right.
Blockchain for micro-credentialing. If only. Who's got that? We'll take it. And so,
Everybody.
no, who's got the solution? He does. And so, anybody else? Quick idea. Yes.
Yeah, Jennifer Schaefer, Athabasca University, Canada's only 100% online university.
Right.
We would love to partner with you on what you're thinking for the state of California.
Okay, partnerships with content. Yep, he's probably heard that from people, including me. And so, anybody else? So yes, that's a good one. Come on, this is it? 150 people, we got like 3 ideas so far? What do you got? I'm gonna start calling on the robots here in the first rows. Yes, back there, yes.
Let's democratize youth support, regardless of ability or location, with one click, and be agnostic with devices or any type of ability, and get connected to our active support systems like tutoring, counseling, instructors, anybody with one click.
So democratization of student support so that a kid, a person, a learner, anybody can just click somewhere and they're engaged in the system rather than having to find how to be engaged in the system, because that's sometimes pretty tough. That's an excellent idea. What else? Way in the back. Virtual reality to teach STEM. Anything that can help teach STEM. So that's a good idea. What else? Way in the back.
Rebranding the value of higher education so that it's not only for the prestigious schools, but it's for everyone.
Rebranding the higher education itself, making it something that some of you might have figured out along the way that there is some social disruption going on in our present society, and there's likely to be a lot more. So if we rebrand this after the great universities are all burned to the ground or taxed out of existence, which is now the first step to that process, it'll be too late. So ideas for rebranding would be something that I think is highly meritorious. Who else? Ideas? Yes?
Working with students and families in grade schools so they understand early on the value of education in relation to work.
So working with families and students from grade school forward, yes? Yes?
Career planning from day one rather than waiting until the end, and transferability of credit.
So career planning from day one, you walk in and you begin career planning from day one, maybe even from as early as high school, where you start thinking about your career and your career path, and then easy transferability of all of your educational commodities. Yes? Co-developing curriculum with local employers, yes? Right. And in the back, I can't read that sign. Does it say like 1 minute? 1 minute. 1 minute. There's this thing. All right, so a couple more, 2 more maybe, 3 more? Quick fire answers. Yes, way in the back. So focus on the adult learner and then also educate the parent relative to the educational pipeline, and you'll affect the next generation. Great. Yes? All right, so reconceive and reconceptualize content to make learning so exciting that it's as important as eating. And Jamie, you will get the last idea on the table today.
Yeah, so a portal to all learning, not just credential learning, right? Just all learning. So if I want to learn anything, I'm going to you first, and then you're connecting me to the rest of the world.
So a portal that connects everyone. So thank you for the comments and your questions. Let's thank Chancellor Oakley.